we're ready. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll call to order the Tuesday, May 11th Public Works Committee meeting. Can we do a roll call, please?
Jenny Wook, City Council.
Bob Heim, City Council.
Maureen Whitaker, city staff.
Jeff Langhelm, city staff.
Brent Ward, city staff.
Aaron Holst, staff.
Jim Franich, council.
We also have in attendance Adam Schmid. He is an attendee.
Okay. All right. Approval of minutes. The wonderful minutes, I might add.
No, thank you.
Yes, move to approve the April meeting minutes.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, new business item number 1 is a release of entrance, release of easement, 9322 Goodman Avenue.
Councilmember Franich, this was the little reordering that we did. I have the agenda on the screen where we're putting the 6-year tip first. So Jeff is able to take care of any business he might have to do during the meeting.
Okay. Very good. The first item then on the new order is a 6-year transportation improvement plan. Mr. Holst.
Okay, I'll share the map.
Thank you and good afternoon, Public Works Committee. It's great to see everybody in this virtual environment. So today before you is the 2022 6-year tip. RCW 357710 requires a 6-year tip to be adopted prior to July 1st of each year. Adopting the tip prior to this date demonstrates compliance with state law and ensures the city will not miss any state or federal grant opportunities. Attached for your review is the 2022 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program tip map only. Please note that no changes have been proposed from last year's tip. The 2022 tip is scheduled for public hearing and adoption on the June 28th council meeting, and an updated tip report and related construction costs will be presented at this time. And I can just expand on that a little bit further here. So for the June 28th council meeting, we intend to go through each project one by one and update the tip report. It's just it's a WashDOT online website that we go on to and log in, and you can you input all the project costs. And so as part of this, we'll be looking at updating each of these project costs for the 2022 tip. So in doing that, that will include looking at the FHWA construction cost index. So we'll take a look at that. And if it hasn't been done, we're going to update that to bring these project costs current. So that will be done. And then if there's any other significant changes to project costs that have came up due to change in scope or otherwise, those will also be updated as part of this. So you'll notice that the projects that are under construction currently have not been removed from this tip. And Mo, can you zoom out on that a little bit just so we can kind of see the whole thing?
Yes. Is that too much?
I'm not seeing it yet, but
Oh,
there we go. Okay.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
It is a bit much.
Okay, let me get this a little bit bigger then. Hold on.
About 65.
65. Let me try. I got 75. Let me try 65.
That looks better. So for example, tip project number 1, the Stinson Avenue overlay and intersection improvement projects, we've kept that on there because the project is not complete yet. So that's just kind of been a policy of ours over the years. If a project is still under construction during the tip update, then we keep it on the tip because you never know what can happen between now and then. So anyways, that project's still on here.
And just a reminder that the tip is associated with the state's calendar year, not, or it's the state's fiscal year, not ours. So that's why the 2022 tip is adopted in as of July 1, 2021. So we're 6 months off. So that's
yeah, a couple of things worth discussing here that we wanted to bring before you today for discussion. And the big one, I think, is the Burnham Drive improvements phase 1, tip project number 16. So as you know, we're moving forward with design of phase 1A of that. So this project could easily be split up into phase 1A and B. In fact, I think that would be our recommendation, is to split that up, because it's sure looking like phase 1A will be moving forward in advance of phase 1B. So that's something that we wanted to discuss with the Public Works Committee tonight, to get concurrence on, and just general project numbering here, see if there's anything else that that we wanted to move up or down in the sequence here. So I think that's about all I'd had prepared, and we're here for questions and discussion.
Well, there's a lot of things here. Let me raise my hand. I didn't get a chance to really go through it in agonizing detail like I typically do. But there are some carryover items from last year and some things that happened in the midst between then and now that I think really need to be reflected, particularly in terms of priority. And I think it's in the discussions with the our representatives in the state Senate and state House, it became clear that we had some mismatches between what we were selling and what was on this. Okay. For example, Representative Young still thought we were widening Malachet real time to 4 lanes, and he was rather upset that nobody told him differently. Anyway, I think we need to make sure that our priorities are reflected on this. And I know you're going to tell me the number isn't the same as the priority is. The priority is not necessarily the same as the number on here, but I guess once again, I would lobby to say they really ought to be. I think otherwise, we will revisit this list numerous times as things happen during the year from a legislative standpoint. And it's almost like we're going to have to reinvent the wheel every time one of these things comes up. Okay, where does this fit in the priority of things? So for starters, I think that, for example, 38th Street, 38th Avenue, phase 2, and I've thought this all along, is way ahead of phase 1B and 1C. And I can pick on traffic, I can pick on delay times, I can pick on shoulder width, you name it, and that's a safety issue. That's really supersedes phase 1B and 1C. When you look at it, every time I've been on that thing, I went back and looked at the 2018 traffic study, and my eyes didn't deceive me. There isn't much traffic on that thing at all, particularly when you get south of 56th, heading down toward Goodman School. There's not much down there. That's the first thing. Second thing is the shoulder, particularly on the Pierce County side, is humongous down there. That thing's probably in some stretches 10, 15 feet wide from the edge of the road to the first time you encounter a utility pole, okay, going perpendicular to the direction of the road. So I think from many aspects, we should seriously consider basically moving 38th phase 2 up in the priority. Now, whether it's a direct replacement for example, phase 1B or phase 1C, particularly phase 1B, that needs to be discussed in a little bit more detail. As you mentioned, I think the Burnham thing needs to be discussed, because here's something that we're already moving on, and it was down the list for quite some time, but as chance have it, we moved that up substantially over the last year and a half to get that thing up to where it is today. So I think it should move up as implementation begins, design work begins. The other one, which is kind of buried and it got lost last year in the discussion, and I didn't object too much because COVID has given us the gift of about a year and a half delay relative to traffic jams in Gig Harbor, particularly on Borgen Boulevard. But it's coming back. It's coming back. In fact, it's coming back pretty fast right now. Last time I was on it. And that's without the elementary school open yet. And that's without the sports complex. And that's without the total build out of the residences up there still being built south of Borgen. So I think the delays which we encountered before, and by the way, the last data we have is the 2018 traffic study, but the delays they're on the rise, and they've shifted. It used to be the left lane going down the hill from Starbucks down to the Canterwood, Burnham, State Route 16 roundabout. Now it's the right-hand lane. It's the dedicated lane to get on to westbound 16. Boy, traffic is really, it's backing up fast. That one's going to be a real problem. So those are just a couple. Then there's some in between that I won't elaborate on right now, but I think we deserve it to ourselves, and I think we deserve it to the rest of council to get into this in some detail. Also, I might add, the new council members have never been through in any detail any of the traffic stuff that we ever reported. Oh my gosh, 4 years ago, I guess it was. That was done in the traffic study to fully understand some of these things, and that might be worthwhile too. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth, and I think it's an extremely valuable tool to have this in a meaningful way in our hip pocket throughout the year, because things come up, they really do, and we can refer to this. And by the way, those full-scale sheets are wonderful. The 11 by 17 full project description sheets. Those help a lot, and I assume that's where the cost data is being updated on those sheets.
Yeah, that's called the TIP report. That's the WashDOT has that software set up for local jurisdictions to use, and yeah, the costs will be updated on those TIP report on the 11 by 17 sheets. Okay.
So by the way, what I'm really lobbying for here on the Borgen Burnham State Route 16 roundabout metering is, I really think that thing is going to need to move up on the priority scale. And by the way, when you think about it, this last year and a half has proven it. You're talking about the commerce gateway to Gig Harbor. You've got to go through that interchange almost no matter where you're coming from, either from the outside somewhere or north of here or south of here or wherever. That's where they come from the Key Peninsula all around. And when that thing backs up, bad things happen. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Hvac.
Thank you. I believe I heard Councilmember Himes discuss splitting up Burnham. And what would that be? What would that look like to split it up? There's a phase 1 and phase 2 that I heard somebody talk about a phase 1B on Burnham. What would that be?
Yeah, so right now we have it identified as project number 16 on the tip, and that's from North Harbor View to Harbor Hill Drive Extension. but the design that we're moving forward with right now is not quite that entire extent. So what we would recommend is splitting that up into phase 1A and number 16, project number 16, into phase 1A and phase 1B. And phase 1A is what is currently under design.
And phase 1B would be what then?
The phase 1B would be the remainder of the project after phase 1A was complete.
And we could split that further as we proceed through budgetary purposes. You could do, for example, phase 1B could be north of phase 1A, and then you could have phase 1C be south of the phase 1A. I mean, the intent though is just to focus on and have a project on the tip that we're actually constructing and in the middle of design on. So I think that we could modify it as necessary, but at least break out phase 1 into at least 2 different parts to include phase 1A being the section that we're under design right now.
Okay.
That's another good one that I failed to mention. The original
So,
phase 1B.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Councilmember Himes, I'm still talking.
Oh,
I
I'm
haven't
sorry.
finished.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So the other one I wanted to talk about there is 38th Street, which is project, I think, number 14 on here. Does it matter to us how much the project is going to cost and where we're going to get the money and about the grants?
You say, does it matter to us in terms of the numbering?
In terms of the numbering, yes.
For staff's perspective, the number and the state's perspective, the numbering has no impact. But we have heard this routinely from the Public Works Committee that a majority, if not all of the Public Works Committee, want the numbering of the projects to be associated with the priority of the projects. That is a policy decision that you can make and we can adjust as necessary. But it has the only person that, or the only entity that matters to is this group or the city council.
Okay, so it doesn't make any difference really with the Public Works Department.
No, we only focus. I mean, this is just numbering to associate it with the table that's associated with the map. That's the only reason the numbers are on here. But if the committee wishes us to renumber these based on our ranked priority, then we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, and then I want to talk a little bit about Prentice. In order for anything to happen on Prentice, it needs to be in the tip. And we're going to take at least two things off the tip, right? For 2022?
That's not true. It doesn't have to be in the tip for you to do something about it. It just has to be, it depends on how you ask for the funding. If it's all local funding, you can do any project you want at any time. And there is a project in the budget under public or pedestrian improvements, and I forget exactly where that is, what page that is in the 2021 budget. But there's, I think, $215,000 for pedestrian improvements across the city as determined by either the Public Works Committee or the City Council. And so I think that was part of the reason that funding was set aside, was for projects such as Prentice to engage in design.
Okay, great,
But it
great.
doesn't have
So
to be
it's, even if it doesn't get worked on it, I think it needs to be somewhere. And I guess that would just be in the budget then, to keep it in the budget as dedicated maybe to Prentice.
Yes. And Trent, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is there an actual objective in the budget for Prentice, or was it just under the pedestrian improvements?
No, I don't believe Prentice is called out specifically. But
Okay.
I think Prentice and the discussions around Prentice was some of the impetus to include that budget item.
Yeah, and I think there was something in there, wasn't there, about doing design? So in order to try to apply for a grant in 2022? So,
I think
okay.
there was.
All right, I just want to make sure that stays in there somehow. Thank you, I'm finished now.
Do you mind if I say something now, Bob, or do you want to just, you got something that's?
No,
on
I
the
can
tip of
stand
your-
the suspense. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I completely agree with Councilmember Himes. The 38th Street that we are now calling phase 2, I think should be moved up. I know it's going to be a phenomenal infrastructure cost. And does the city own both sides of that road?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, well, there's gonna, I was just on that road yesterday, and you've got telephone poles. It's not gonna be an easy project, but I don't think that is something that we need to really, we need to take it into some consideration, but I think we need to start looking at that a lot more heavily. And I also agree with Councilmember Himes that I would like to see some semblance of priority numbering. I know that things change. Obviously, they did when we decided to do the the Burnham Drive sidewalk improvement, which was number 16. So, but some semblance of prioritization, I think, would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, and we've heard that from the committee, like Jeff mentioned, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, it's got definitely some validity to it.
Okay, and I'll save the last of my couple comments. Go ahead, Councilmember Himes.
Burnham Drive, phase 1B, I guess it is. Originally, if I recall, that was designed or defined as going from the Harbor Hill roundabout all the way over to Borgen, I think was the way it was listed. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, that's
phase 2.
Is called phase 2 now. Yeah.
Phase 2. Okay. That's one that I must admit I kind of shake my head. We've got the Cushman Trail within a stone's throw of where that thing comes out. It starts at the same point. They're just north of the roundabout where it crosses Burnham, and then it hits Borgen right there at the roundabout. Okay, if you go a stone's throw up Borgen about 300 feet, lo and behold, you run into the parking lot of the Cushman Trail. So I'm sitting there saying, we got two redundant bicycle and pedestrian ways to get over to Borgen. Now, I know that's going to be popular, but I'm not sure it's going to be that popular. And also, I would think twice before I ever put pedestrian traffic, deliberately routed it down into the roundabout there, or close to that roundabout there at Burnham, Borgen, and Canterwood. So just my thinking, that's one I really think you could put together a whale of a case that said, hey, we probably ought to pull that thing off. It makes no sense. I would much rather take that money, for example, for the people that are really hot on the Cushman Trail and figure out how to jump over Borgen, which has been the big bugaboo the whole time, okay, rather than have two ways and then get stopped at Borgen because you don't know how to get across it. One that goes across Borgen, I think, is better than two that stop at Borgen, okay, is what I'm really emphasizing. So anyway, my opinion, but I think I could make a heck of a case that says phase 2 is a non-starter, given the fact that we've got the Cushman Trail essentially running parallel to it this whole stretch.
I would agree with that. Should be, and it is fairly low on the numbering, but that one can wait for the at least from my perspective, for the reasons Councilmember Himes cited. So the other thing that when we started originally talking about the Burnham sidewalks last year, it was phase 1, and phase 2 was the one that Councilmember Himes was just talking about. Well, when we came back with the $7.6 million, that changed up the discussion on phase 1. And I think we came to a common sense decision that there's no sense in pulling out existing sidewalks, no matter, I don't care, and I'm in a wheelchair, over some minuscule grade of sidewalk that doesn't meet ADA standards when we've got roads that have no sidewalks at all on them. So, and it's kind of bothered me since then because I don't know where it came from. I believe it came from staff. I don't remember any council ever talking about. Then all of a sudden it just started getting phase 1A and this phase 1B started just kind of making its way into the discussion. So I think from a physical responsibility, a community responsibility to get sidewalks where they're most needed, that this so-called phase 1B, that needs to be, it should be not even considered, in my opinion, or very, very low on the list of things to get done. To tear out existing sidewalks, to regrade them because they do not meet some sort of new ADA standards. When you've got people walking on a dirt path on 38th Street, we should all be strung up if we moved ahead with pulling out sidewalks that exist and ignore 38th Street. So could staff comment on where did this discussion about 1B, where did that initiate? Because I don't believe it was at this committee.
Well, yeah, I can speak to part of this anyways. If you'll recall, there's a gap in sidewalk improvements beginning at North Harborview Drive. So there's a gap from North Harborview Drive up to, well, there's a couple little pieces along the way, but generally up to the, what is it, Puerto Vallarta?
Yeah.
And so that portion, you know, a few years ago, we did have a project to construct sidewalk along there. And for various reasons, that project did not ever get completed. There was actually a grant to fund part of it. So that is a portion of what this is describing as phase 1 that seems like it would be prudent to construct sidewalks. So I think phase 1B could definitely be defined as North Harborview to the Puerto Vallarta area. And it would fill that gap.
That would make sense to me.
And it's similar to how we approached the 38th Avenue sidewalk projects. Originally, it was a phase 1 and a phase 2, but we realized that phase 1 was so large that we couldn't really afford it in all one big heavy lift. So we subdivided it. And I think we heard pretty clearly from council that if we were going to use TIF and local funds for phase 1 on Burnham Drive, that we were going to break it down into smaller parts. And the Public Works Committee said, we want to start with the section from where essentially the sidewalk ends just north of the Hvac and the Eagles to where it begins again near 96th Street.
Yep.
That's correct. Okay.
Isn't there going to be a development down on Burnham?
Harbor Point, yeah.
There's a,
Yeah, there's the Burnham Drive Apartments project, if that's the one you're referring to.
No, she's
North
talking about
Harborview to Austin, I think, right?
Oh, that's
No,
along
no,
the
no,
frontage
no.
that's along the frontage of Harborview Drive.
Right. Then they're going to put a sidewalk in, right?
Well, that was Heritage Point plat. They've invested for, I want to say 3 years, maybe 4. And they're if they don't construct soon, they're going to lose their vesting.
I think they're in year number 4.
Yeah.
So they're running shy on time, like Jeff just said, and that project may or may not ever come to fruition.
So would it be better for us to put the sidewalk in, or would it be better for us if they lose their investment? Would it be better to wait and have someone else come in and put a sidewalk in?
Well, I think that's the priority of the council in place at the time. But there's right now, I don't see us constructing that sidewalk until long after that project has either been constructed soon or lost its vesting. The vesting will have been lost if they don't construct before we even start to engage in a design and construction for that section of sidewalk.
So if they lose their vesting, should the city put the sidewalk in, or should the city wait for somebody else to build that area?
That's a decision totally up to city council and this committee to push that forward. There are sidewalk priorities across the city, and this is just the one that was identified as part of the transportation element. And recall that this section of sidewalk was intended to promote connection between Gig Harbor North and downtown, including Cushman Trail connection at 96th Street. So if we don't have an ADA compliant pedestrian connection between downtown Gig Harbor or the Harborview, North Harborview area up to Cushman Trail, then maybe this would be the alternative way of getting to the Cushman Trail.
Thank you.
Well, isn't it true that through the hearing examiner, that, because that is a challenging hillside there. There's not a whole lot of right of way before you're into the hillside there. Didn't they get a public works variance to construct some sort of, well, obviously not up to code, well, up to public works standard sidewalks?
Yeah, the variance for that plat, Heritage Point plat that we're referring to from Austin Street North, that public works variance allowed the developer to put in a separated sidewalk, so curb and gutter, a landscape strip with a 5.5 foot wide sidewalk and a shorter wall. And the reason or the purpose of the variance was to allow them to not have to put the retaining wall and the improvements at the limits of right of way. The right of way is very wide there. I think it's 100 feet or 120 feet wide. And so it still required them to construct public improvements to our minimum standard of 5.5 foot wide sidewalk.
Well, wasn't it, I thought that there was some deviation from public works standards they've received.
That is what it is. They didn't have to develop the full half street improvement along their frontage.
Would if the city moved forward with a project to complete that section of sidewalk, could we take advantage of the whatever criteria, well, or standards that they receive from the hearing examiner? Or would we be tied down to a stricter course of building?
Well, technically, we would be obligated to our standards. However, we could consider a variance for various reasons if we could justify it along there.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to burn up too much more time on this because I think Aaron said this is coming in June to the council. So I've got one more question then if either of the other council people have questions. Could you refresh my memory on number 11? What did that, and that's Harborview Drive Pioneer intersection improvements. What was the nature of those?
Yeah, those were just, that was a small project just for pedestrian improvements at Harborview and Pioneer. I believe there's a curb ramp that's out of compliance there. So it was a small project that came out of that 2018 transportation element review. Okay,
well, I'd like to probably discuss that during the budget cycle. And, you know, I'm not quite sure what the resistance I keep getting to put a rapid flashing beacon on the Cross Harborview on the west side of the brick wall.
Well,
Can you explain that to me?
I'll start and then Trent can backfill, but rapid flashing beacons are associated with mid-block crossings. And so we're not allowed per federal standards to place rapid flashing beacons at full stop controlled intersections with crosswalks. A full stop controlled intersection with a crosswalk is not a mid-block crossing. And so just by definition of having a three-way stop at a three-way intersection, that is no longer a mid-block crossing, and rapid flashing beacons are not allowed.
So I guess roundabouts are considered mid-block crossings?
Well, it's not at the roundabouts. The crosswalk is not at the intersection. It's back away from the intersection.
And they're yield controlled, not stop controlled.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Himes?
Yeah, backing up just a second on the stretch between Harborview, going up North Harborview, up to the intersection with Burnham there. We've discussed it numerous times. There's an escape route right now going right down Burnham. You've got a sidewalk and you've got a lightly used street there. That thing is not used very often. Burnham all the way down to Harborview. So I think one of the alternatives may be to see how we do with the existing project between the Eagles going on up to the Harbor Hill roundabout and see how well that fits the bill, and then have the discussion around how fast we should move on either putting in sidewalks from Harborview all the way up to Port Velarde in that area. So it's just something that we got to keep in mind. So we've got a workaround right now. It's not the prettiest in the world, but hey, you're out there walking and exercising. What's a few more feet? And it's very nice down there. So anyway, that's that. The other question I had is, it's been almost 4 years since we had a traffic study. When's the next one planned? Which I think should be one of the big elements of this whole discussion.
Yeah, and Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but didn't we have a transportation element update budgeted that was that pulled and it didn't happen, or?
I thought it was still in the budget. I just didn't. I think it was, well, it was in last year's budget, and I think it was put back into the 2021 budget. I don't recall if it stayed in there. I know that it has not been a priority to get that completed.
It was removed in the 21 budget, this year's budget. It's showing up in there, but it's a removed objective.
There you go.
Because I think maybe in
Council-
22, that may be a good time to do it. The reason I say that is hopefully by 22, we'll be out of the COVID-19 mess and traffic will get back to its normal volume. Okay, like I say, we've been spared the last year and a half of high traffic volumes. So I guess I would lobby strongly that we ought to be budgeting that for 2022, because that's really the basis on the congestion side of the discussion. That's the magic numbers we go by. Okay, at least I go by them, and I think everybody else in council does too. And then I think we're also going to see some changes in patterns. For example, I think traffic may pick up on the westbound exit there at Willachet, okay, getting off the freeway.
Yeah, I could speak to the COVID piece of the traffic volumes a little bit here. I won't take too much of your time, but yeah, I mean, I agree it is important to do this, this traffic update, new traffic counts, but like you bring up, COVID is making traffic counts very tricky. In fact, there's been, just due to school hours shifting and people working from home, there's been, as you've noticed, there's been significant changes in people's traffic patterns, and therefore, we have some different kind of peaks now. There's kind of a different school peaks. There's almost like a noon peak that we didn't really see as heavy of traffic volumes previously. And so yeah, until this whole COVID traffic volume phenomenon kind of equalizes, it's not really worth doing for the time being, just because, we're all hoping this goes away and we get back to kind of a normal life and normal traffic patterns. But yeah, for the time being, traffic counts are very different than what we're used to seeing.
Very good. Councilmember Wood.
Yeah, thank you. is anything scheduled for traffic or widening streets or anything in Gig Harbor North? I assume not. I don't see anything. I've been asked about it to slow traffic down. Is anything, are we doing any traffic calming up there? Is anything happening?
We have the RRFB project happening this year in Gig Harbor North, and are you referring to projects that are actually under construction this year?
No, I know about the beacons for this year, but I was just wondering about anything, anytime within the next 3 or 4 years in Gig Harbor North.
Everything we had planned for the next 6 years is on the map here. So yeah, the only project for Gig Harbor North or Borgen you'll see on the map here, which is the roundabout metering, the restriping, head crossing, Fishman Trail.
And
That's going to be a busy area.
yes, but and as we noted earlier in this discussion, the council has the ability to adjust and add projects that are locally funded without having them put on the tip. It just has to, it's very limited in how you can fund the project.
And do we know what we could do up there to make the traffic easier, flow better?
Well, I mean, we have ideas for traffic calming, but I think that would be a separate topic. And I know we've talked about the ideal way to do this would be to put those traffic calming measures associated with each classification of roadway in the public works standard. So if we decide as a city to put in traffic calming, then we look at our variety of options based on this classification of roadway to slow traffic down.
And so that's the public works standards for 2022?
Correct. That's where it's not going to be completed in 2021. So we'd be looking at 2022.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing further on, Councilmember Himes, quickly.
Yeah, I mean, in what, within residential areas or main arterials, or what are we talking about here?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is that you have a variety of traffic calming measures depending on the classification of roadway. Of course, for arterial and boulevards, we're not going to put speed bumps in there. We have other ways of performing traffic calming measures, shifting lanes, narrowing lanes. And so those are the types of measures we'd be looking at.
Okay, yeah, because I got fooled once big time. I would have sworn they would have speeded up going from the Harbor Hill extension, going up that way and going through the Harbor Hill subdivision to get over to Peacock Hill instead of going all the way up to Borgen and entering that traffic, and it never happened. And I think Aaron, you were involved in putting speed bumps in there and all kinds of stuff. It never happened, or counting bumps, not speed bumps. It never really happened. Well, speed and counts. But yeah, I guess we can keep our eyes open though.
Okay,
Maureen,
all right.
would you, I just got a message from City Administrator Larson. Would you please bring him into the panelist side? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. So I'm looking at a printed agenda from earlier. So did we just move 2 to number 1 and we're back on track now?
Yeah, we just swapped 2 and 1, so we can
Okay.
go back. We can go.
All right. So new business item number 2 is the release of easement.
Yes. So thank you, and I know, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Trent. Appreciate your time. Feel free to move on with your day.
Thanks.
And I'm hoping you've got a better map than what was provided.
Yeah, I do. I'm going to bring that up. I have an aerial photo. It was so I'll bring that up here in just a second. I'm assuming most of you know where we're talking, but I'm going to show this map and zoom in here real quick.
Just east of Peacock, I think.
Just east of Peacock, exactly. So is the screen showing my map? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this parcel right here is the one we're talking about. It's owned by Mr. Adam Schmid. and I believe he's still in the attendee list. So here's Bernhard's and here's Goodman Ave. I'm going to zoom into that parcel. You can see it's undeveloped, fully treed. And then I'm going to switch over now to the map that I showed you. So any questions on this one right now? I can turn on a topo layer if you want, but I think the geotech map shows, oh no, it doesn't show topo layers. So any questions on this map right now?
No.
None.
Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the map that was provided in the packet. And if you want to see topo layers, I can show you that also. This map that was provided as part of the geotech report that Mr. Schmidt provided shows the top of approximate steep slope. So by the time you take the building envelope here and the usable area, there was a limited amount of buildable area with the easement intact. So they're looking to have this 15-foot easement released so that they can use that as part of the buildable area of the site.
What is the hash marked where it says lot 2 and you can see lot on the bottom right there? What is?
Okay, so that's a good question. So those are the underlying tax lots that were created when the plat was created. So this is part of, I believe, Town of Artina, Block 10, that was created back in right before the 1900s began. And so those are the individual lots that were created. Those no longer exist, but that's just showing the underlying plat of Artina.
Okay, well, what exactly is the lot that we're talking about? Where are the lines?
It's well, I'll
The
go back
solid
to
black line?
solid black lines. Yes. That's the actual lot of record as it sits today.
And is there one 15-foot easement or two 15-foot easements?
One 15-foot easement that runs from north to south.
And what was the original intent of the easement and how has that gone away?
Okay, let me go back. Sorry. The original intent was to provide utilities for water, sewer, stormwater across the lot, because in Artina Lane, which I've got too many maps open here. Artina Lane is right here. This is a private road that leads to a public road down here, Milton. And there's city utilities in this roadway. So the intent was to connect existing utilities in Goodman through the lot to Artina and this way. But instead, the city has done that by going down this section of what used to be Hall Street. This is still right of way here, unopened public right of way.
Okay. So, and we don't see any need for that in the future for utilities getting that workaround.
Correct. I've had conversations with Trent and with Ken and with Daryl about future needs. It doesn't show at all in any of our water system plans, storm plans, wastewater comp plan, in the 20-year plan that we will need any of that easement for any utility. We have
what does the red line represent?
Approximate top of steep slope.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It means below that is I don't know what, this is GeoResources map. I don't know what that grade is, but below that line, the slope drops off drastically and it's essentially unbuildable or extreme engineering in order to make it buildable.
So could you put the topo map up, please?
Yeah, let me pull that open here just a second, sorry. I'm going to stall while I do that because I've got to get that layer open. I thought I had it on. All right, let me.
I noticed that lot was just recently purchased.
It was. Yes.
It's substantially less than the assessed value.
Okay, almost there. I'm getting a couple of utilities on. Okay, getting closer. Almost there. I think that's it. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to switch over now to the map. Okay, it's going to be hard to see this parcel, but I'll highlight it here for a quick second. Let me identify it. Sorry. Computer's running very slow right now. Maximizing it. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that highlighted parcel now. Okay, so that's the parcel in question. What I have on here is the topo. These are 2-foot contour lines, LiDAR. And then you can see blue is water main, green is sewer main, and purple is storm. I can zoom in a little more if you'd one more level if you'd like. No? Okay.
No.
Okay, so essentially that line that was on the previous drawing is along this area here. So there's like a knob. This Goodman Ave was built on a knob, and then there's this ravine that's well below this parcel here, and you can see the contour lines are very close, meaning it's very steep. So the buildable area is right here, and that's just about where the easement runs right through. And you can see how steep it is down here. Even if we were to have a need to expand or extend our utility capacity through in this area, it's highly unlikely we would ever go through this area because it is so steep.
So the property that's right underneath this turquoise property, are there any homes? Are there going to be homes down the bottom of this hill?
It's hard to see, but let me turn off the contours. There is a home down there already. It's 3656 Artina Lane.
Okay.
Let me see if I'll turn that back off here. Yeah, these layers can be overwhelming.
And is there any, oh, I see the house.
Yep.
Is there any, if this is built up here, is there any, does this affect this house and this property down here?
Does it affect it? Only as much as a neighboring house developing an adjacent property would affect another adjacent property.
Up on a hill.
Yeah, up on a hill. They have to mitigate for it. They have to follow all of our land use codes in order to receive a permit. Stormwater code. Yeah.
Does the easement run along the property edge, or is it in the middle of the parcel, or where is it?
Let me go back to the other screen. Just a second here. Sorry.
I don't know. Were you done, Jenny? Or
I was done.
Councilmember?
Thank you.
So here's the, can you see that, Councilmember Franich? This is the easement here. So it's a long rectangular easement. It does not run across the property's edge. It doesn't have a dimension, but you can see that there the easement is 15 feet, 7.5 feet on either side of the center line. And this is 60 feet from edge to edge. That 60 feet is a previously abandoned right-of-way. So most of this property was created through the abandonment of Goodman Ave, because Goodman Ave, as the site was platted, just continued to run north-south. And of course, as many of you know the history of how plats were developed in the West, that many areas of the West were platted, but how many of them were actually buildable? There's quite a few that were not. Just take a look. If you ever want to see something interesting, go look at the platting of Boston Harbor down near Olympia. And it was platted so that it sold many lots that were in the mud to people who lived on the East Coast. But same thing here. So it was platted in an area that was unbuildable for a roadway. Did that answer your question, Councilmember Franich?
Yeah, it does. If by the easement being there, the property owner can't build a house over the top of the easement. Is that why we're looking to vacate this?
Correct. The easement is, if the easement remains, the property owner would have to build the house within the envelope of this dark dashed line. That's what this dark dashed line is the building envelope anticipated. There's a side yard setback, front yard setback, rear yard setback. And then the other setback would be right up against the easement. So that's the buildable area.
And that what is 35.8 feet across?
Yeah, and it's here, I'll do a quick average. Let's just say it's because it's not perfectly rectangular, let's just say it's 34 by, what's that, 50
Yeah.
roughly, just for quick numbers. 1,700 square foot.
I guess where I'm coming out here is from a easement standpoint. I don't think there's an issue, at least in my mind. There's no use for it from a city utilization standpoint. But I really do think that community development ought to have at least a look. Let me put it that way. Because I don't know where this is going. I always I can almost feel the cuts and fills from here that's associated with this. But that's a community development issue, not a public works issue. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to keep those separate.
Yeah, it's tough. However, if this thing goes forward, they'll have to go through that process with community development to come to an agreeable situation relative to the location of any residential unit on that property. So I guess that's where I'm at right now. From a public works standpoint, I don't think there's an issue here.
Okay. And I'm just looking for, I'm looking for a recommendation before it will go to the public or to the full council. I'm just looking for a recommendation at this point from the committee.
So, and I also agree with Councilmember Himes that from an easement standpoint for public works, I don't think it is affecting that at all. So maybe we should recommend that it's a go from public works.
Well, I would like to hear from community development on what their thoughts are on this.
So you would recommend, but making it contingent upon community development to see at it?
Absolutely.
Okay, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Shouldn't slow
Yeah.
things down.
So we can do that, Jeff?
Can you have input from community development on the easement release?
No, on the overall site, development of the site in general.
I think what would be appropriate to ask community development is the lot developable with the easement intact? I don't think it's appropriate to ask if the easement's removed, how could they develop the lot and what impacts it would have, because that's a separate discussion.
I'd agree
Well,
with that.
that's my concern.
Well, I think that's, I think if you were to, I'm not gonna, what I would do from Public Works perspective is just to ask if the lot was developable with the easement intact.
I go along with that.
Yeah.
And then we'll let our imagination fill in the blanks later.
Just as a side note, would we be vacating this or would we be getting any kind of remuneration?
We would be vacating it.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, the
Can I ask
next
a
item of
question?
business.
Can I ask a question? Do we have to wait for public comment for if Mr. Schmid wants to speak?
Well, I didn't know we were taking any public comment at these meetings other than just the general public comment at the end of the meetings.
I think you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's
You're right.
true. And he will have the chance to. Yeah.
We don't want to get in trouble with the OPMA.
right.
Okay, so the number 3 is the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space update.
Yes, thank you. So I believe all of you received my memo, just a quick summary of where we are. I have a schedule up on my screen if you'd like to look at it. I just wanted to go through with the Public Works Committee where we are with this process and the next steps in the process, and look for any revisions, changes, input, comments that you have before proceeding to the next steps. So I'm going to share my screen unless there's any questions before I do that. Okay. Make sure I share the correct one here. Let's see. Are you able to see a Word document that starts off with a bullet that says May 5th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I obviously have too many screens up. So this is essentially what I presented to the Parks Commission back in April when I set forth this topic with the Parks Commission and the plan to move forward. I've updated it since that April 7th Parks Commission meeting. And so I want to make sure I gave you the right one because I've updated it. So essentially this is the plan for the pros plan update. We've been working on this with the Parks Commission to develop a draft inventory of park facilities. That's something that takes a lot of effort on the Parks Commission's part, or staff if the Parks Commission wasn't doing it. So we really appreciate what they've provided. I could go through and show you this spreadsheet, but it's massive and it has all of our main parks. It doesn't have all of our trails and such, but it has all of our main active and passive parks in it. And it goes through and talks about condition of facilities and any facilities that are missing, and any things that need attention. So it's a benefit to both the pros plan update, but also we were talking about doing this on a routine basis to provide an update to our operations group so they can see what might need, from an outsider's point of view, might need to be updated. So anyway, that's what the Parks Commission's working on. We have developed a conceptual public outreach plan. This is going to include a little bit of support from our GIS group and community development. We're here today just to update and review this schedule with the Public Works Committee. In June, we need to start engaging with the public to receive their input, and then included in that will be essentially an open-ended question of just to introduce the public to the concept of the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan, and to essentially go through with the public what the process will be, and then to start working together in that July to October timeframe to provide support in developing the pros plan. A lot of the heavy lifting will be done by the Parks Commission again. So without a parks manager right now, I don't have the time to dedicate to it. There is funding available in the 2021 budget to provide a consultant contract to support the pros plan development. At this point, since we don't have a parks manager on board, we're going to be reaching out to consultants for a scope and fee so that we can get a consultant on board to do that work. It might not come to council depending on the value of the contract. It's probably going to be within the contract authority of the mayor or city administrator if it stays within the budgeted amount. Councilmember Wook.
Yes, once upon a time, we were wanting to include some maintenance costs with all of these parks.
Yes.
Do I see that anywhere on here where that's included?
It's in one of these bullets here. I'll highlight it for you. It's right here.
O&M.
Okay,
Yep. So yes, so thank you for that reminder, but we have captured that. That's going to be part of the discussion. It's not going to be necessarily a discussion with the public, but we want to be able to use our operations staff and others, and including the consultant, to help us make sure we're on track to identify what those ongoing O&M needs are and costs.
okay, thank you.
But the key here is that we have a lot to do. Level of service review, that is a little harder to understand for parks than it would be for roads or for utilities. Roads and utilities, it's pretty easy to tell when something fails. Maybe less so transportation, that's more in the eye of the beholder. But parks is, it's more along the lines of, based on population, do we have enough open space to serve our population? Do we have enough playgrounds to serve our population, both tot lots, the up to 5 years old, and then the lots for older kids, which is 5 to 12. Do we have, and so that's going to be the discussion. Passive, do we have enough passive parks? So lots to go on. And I'm sorry, I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if, did we lose Councilmember Franich? Are you still here?
Oopsie.
Yeah, my screen flickered and then all of a sudden he disappeared. So I didn't know if it's my screen or his. I can wait a little bit. And also Maureen's screen turned off. I don't know if she's helping and Bob's gone. Here we are.
The park space, you mentioned the tot lots and all that.
Yeah.
Do we factor in the effect of the various new subdivisions that have got open space in them, and the HOA is basically running tot lots and sport lots and a bunch of things?
We do note those as applicable to those subdivisions if they're private, but we can't count them as citywide, but we do note them and they are available. I mean, even if you look at our pros plan from last time, we also were able to lean on some of the Penn Met Park facilities and even Hvac State Park to say that there's some of those needs for the region provided through the regional park facilities. And we don't have to supply all of the needs for all of our citizens. We can rely on Penn Met, we can rely on the state, whomever. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Councilor Rhines. Okay, just FYI, Mo, it looks like we're missing Councilmember Franich. I don't know if he's in the attendees.
His hand is raised. Did he leave the meeting?
I think he left the meeting and he needs to be brought from the attendees to the panelists.
Okay, just a second. There he is. Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
See, it doesn't show up when you're sharing a screen. It's hard to see. I saw something at the bottom. I'm learning.
Just a suggestion when sharing the screen, click on the participants and have them. Yeah,
okay.
That's one. Yeah, I know that you don't have two screens, but and it's hard to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So let me see. Councilmember Franich, you're here.
Is he
No.
back?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I got dropped off somehow.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure how much you heard or have any questions on this, but I was just going to finish going through the schedule at this point, unless you have any. Okay.
No, that's fine.
So the next two topics that the Parks Commission is working on is actually level of service review and review of policies and goals. They're going to look at the existing and see what else is might be out there. And then we're going to jump into the next few bulleted items with the Parks Commission. And we're going to be spending quite a bit of time at each one of their meetings coming up. So we have through October. And then we're going to bring the public into the process. And we haven't defined how yet. That's one of the things I was hoping our parks manager or our consultant would be able to help us with, is how and when to bring the public into this. But there's going to be at least 2 opportunities for the public to engage after we outline for the public what we're going to be doing to update our pros plan. Now, I'm going to jump right to the very end because the rest of it's all reviews. But there's a couple key points in here, and all of it has to do with that magic February 28th for second reading. This document is due to be updated in order to continue to receive RCO grants and RCO funding. And as you know, we have many RCO grants out there. If we don't update this document in a timely manner, RCO will stop paying for on the grants for reimbursements. Now, it doesn't happen right now, but it could happen. We could be starting to request grant reimbursements soon. And I have already asked the RCO if we could have a 6 to 12 month deferral in the due date for our pros plan. And they said no. They said maybe a month if we get down to the end of the time frame and we have completed all of our steps but just aren't there yet. They would be willing to allow us up to a month deferral or delay in approval of this. But since that's not going to help us a whole lot because I was hoping to get a 6 to 12 month delay so we could get a parks manager on board and have them do this. We're going to go ahead and aim for that February 28th second reading at council. But you'll also see we have to submit to Department of Commerce, and that's going to be at the end of December because they have a 60-day comment period. And so in order to get that completed in time before council takes action, we have to back up quite a ways. So there's a lot of work to do between now and end of the year.
Jeff?
Yes.
Go-
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Frank, was that you?
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, you mentioned the public input on this thing, and you said the technique or the process wasn't fully defined yet. You were thinking what, of open house or something similar to that?
Yes, open house. And that's going to be, of course, there's the kickoff meeting with the public in June of 2021, but then in the July through October timeframe where it says develop pros plan draft, right in there, we would intersperse a couple of 1 or 2 open houses, and it could be via Zoom. I'm not saying they have to be in live in person, but we could have some Zoom open houses for the public to attend and provide their input.
Okay. So the capital project cost estimates and the operations and maintenance costs would be in those reviews.
Yeah, we're trying to go generally in order you see it. It makes most sense to go in this order for a number of reasons. But yeah, so I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Councilor Rhymes, but I'm not sure if by the time we have our first, maybe only, I don't know, open house with the public, if we will have our O&M needs and cost estimates completed by then. That might come after the public open house or the public process. I don't know yet. It all depends on timing.
If there's any way to get it in there, I really feel strongly it should be in there. Right now, my knock on some of the open houses has been when the candy's free, I want everything. And,
sure. Well, yeah, and for better or for worse, I mean that's part of the public process is to try and approach the public first by saying, hey, if not thinking about costs, what would you like? And then we refine that and say, okay, well, here's some issues, here's some costs. We can't do everything.
Okay.
There is, and so that's those first 3 bullets in the July to October timeframe are essentially, ideally, what should we build? How would we build parks in the city? And then the last 2 bullets. So that's why I see logically, if we have time, I'd really like to have 2 separate public meetings, one at the end of the 3rd bullet, and one at the end of all of the bullets, all 5 of those bullets.
I agree. That would be great.
I completely disagree with the timing. I believe that the operation and maintenance in the capital estimates, that should be number 1 on the list. Because as Councilmember Himes said, when the candy's free, everybody will take all they can. And it's when you don't have those costs talked about up front, you're setting yourself up for a lot harder discussion when you have to try and educate the public on, yeah, we understand you'd really like all this, but this is how much it costs. And I believe it sets us up for not failure, but it puts us in a bad position when we don't have the cost discussion before we ask them what they want.
Councilmember Wook, may I respond to that before you ask your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Franich, I completely understand why you're saying that. The reason, if we had more time, I would say we would start with what you're saying, talk about what the existing capital project list looks like, how much that costs, and then get input for where we want to go from there. The reason, though, that I'm proposing it in this order is because what if the level of service shows we need to review shows that we need to have many more 5 to 12-year-old playground equipments if we're going to set that level of service, and then but we don't have those today. So how do we know that we need to build? Let's just, for imaginary numbers, let's just say level of service review, remote review of policies and goals shows that we need 6 new 5 to 12-year-old playground equipment throughout the city to meet our level of service. Until we do that LOS review and review of policies and goals, we don't know what capital needs we need. And so you'd be having a cost estimate on projects that is inappropriate or inadequately listed. And then you'd get to the end of in the scenario that we were talking about here, you get to the end of your project needs and cost estimates, and then you'd go back and look at your level of service goals and policies, and you say, oh, well, we need to update this because now we need to add 6 new 5 to 12-year-old playground.
Well, I remember this discussion right around the time we were having the traffic impact fee discussion. The pros, I believe that we're a couple of years behind on this because we had a brief discussion about level of service review back then, and Katrina said, we're going to get to it, but who determines the level of service? The Commerce Department, the council, the public? Who has the input?
Well, there are guidelines that come from RCO, but the final decision is made by the city council.
So, but I thought that, because as I remember this discussion from 3 years ago, I believe we've got more than enough parks in the city. We're park heavy. And Katrina was saying back then when, under this light review, so to speak, that we were, I don't know, it was 6 or 10 acres we're short on parks.
Yes, and that's identified in our current 2016 pros plan. It shows, if you look under the level of service section of the 2016 pros plan, it will identify where we're short. And we don't have to abide by that. I am not an expert on RCO requirements, but my understanding is that we can vary from that. Those are guidelines, they're not requirements, but the city council gets to determine what our levels of service will be. And that's one great thing about parks. It's really personalized to the region or the jurisdiction you're in.
Well, under that July to October timeframe, that level of service review, is that talking about the Parks Commission or is that the council?
It's talking about the Parks Commission and the public. Like, it's not going to come back to the Public Works Committee or any council formally until October 12th.
Well, see, I really, I think that that level of service, I think the council as a whole should have a very in-depth discussion on realistic level of service.
And I understand why you would say that, but I also understand that there are many council members who say they want to hear from the public before they make this type of decision. But anyway, if and this is the kind of input I'm looking for. If the majority of the Public Works Committee directs us to develop the level of service review and come back to the Public Works Committee, or come back to the full council and have the level of service established before proceeding further, then that's the kind of input we're looking for. And I'm sorry, Councilmember Himes, I didn't go back to Councilmember Wook's hand raised that she had a question she had earlier.
Is your hand up, Jenny?
Well, my hand was up, and then I took it down when Jeff said he'd come back to me. So
I yield to you if you've got something to.
So I think I can just imagine our citizens saying, look, we went, we told them what we wanted, and then they said we couldn't afford it after we left, or after I left, or at another meeting. And then they might go to one meeting and they may not come back for the second meeting. So I think we have to have the OMM needs before the end of this. So however it gets done, I think it's important. And I quite frankly, I would really like to see this at the beginning meeting with the public, with the first meeting at the public, so that they know what's being discussed, and they know how much it's going to cost and how much it's going to cost to maintain it. So I think that's really important.
Okay. Okay.
I would agree with that. In the only alternative is to put a big disclaimer on the initial meetings with the public, subject to budget and a few other things. And I don't think that's going to stop anybody in terms of wanting things. So I agree with Councilmember Wook, and I agree with Councilmember French. Somehow we need to get that in there, and people need to understand this is not free.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all for that. So do you need anything more from us on this, Jeff?
No, I think I've laid out the schedule for you and have received some input on some direction of how to approach the public. So I think we can, I'll relay that when we meet with the Parks Commission in June.
I'm not 100% clear on what the recommendation was. I mean, we're going to reorder where the O&M needs and cost estimates and the capital project estimates are on the schedule.
Yeah, what I think I heard is we're going to start with the public, and maybe that's at the June 2021 meeting, to engage with the public to talk about specifically what the O&M costs are today to maintain the existing parks today. Because I mean, we can't estimate how much the future costs to operate and maintain parks will be until we have a list of what those future parks will be. But to let start the conversation with the public and then about O&M needs and costs immediately, and then also come back to the council and or full Public Works Committee with level of service standards drafted for discussion. At probably a study session with the council is what I would guess.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't mind seeing, well, I guess you can engage with the public, but early on, I think we need to have capital project estimates in conjunction with the O&M needs.
Well, again, for the current PROS plan, we have capital project estimates already. Before and so the question is can we provide those? Yeah, we can provide those today. But if that capital projects estimate bullet is to say what the capital project estimates are for projects that we haven't yet identified.
Okay, that's good. I haven't poured through it completely. Now I have a printed copy from Mr. Larson, so I'll be putting some time into looking at that. And I would just like to say, Jeff, thank you for reviewing this schedule with us. I am glad that my other two council people feel that it's important to get the order right. So I appreciate you letting us have a chance to give you some input on that.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
Now, was I to understand that is the Ansich human powered craft story, is that off now or?
No, that's on. That's next.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. I've got to,
Right? It's still on the agenda, right, Mo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just writing some notes though before I get much further here.
I'm in the Public Works Committee meeting, man. Oh, she's moving it. Oh, okay, there you are. Now I see you. Okay, all right.
sorry.
Thanks for answering, Jim. I was trying to get in.
That's good.
No,
Sorry about
I
that.
jumped in because I think you are about to talk about some of the storage things.
Yeah.
Good timing.
Yep.
Good timing. So yeah, so that's next on the agenda. Okay, if I proceed, Councilmember Framich?
Yes.
All right, so I provided with my memo a table, and I can share it on the screen if you'd like. If you want to see it on the screen.
Yeah, I'd like to see it because it didn't, Mr. Larson printed off me the meeting material, but I didn't seem to get that one. And so I don't know how to get my computer 2 screens going on one time. I don't want to lose you guys.
Yeah, no worries. Let me do that right now here. Hopefully it's big enough. It's a pretty big spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Okay, can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me adjust my screen so I can see you in my screen. Okay. So again, I provided a memo. Oops. I provided a memo, and then I provided this table here. So this was initially discussed at the April Parks Commission meeting about what we staff are looking for from the Parks Commission, and we essentially were just looking for their input on what their comments input was for both storage rental terms and storage rental costs and other items that they might think is an issue as we proceed forward to construct and develop the human-powered storage racks inside the Ansich boat storage building. So I think we all know where we're talking about. I have some pictures of the inside of the building. If you haven't been in there or haven't been in there lately and you want to refresh yourself, I could bring those up if you wanted me to. No? Okay. So we have about
Jeff,
1,400.
just sorry, is PC1, PC2? I'm assuming that's Parks Commission. Is this some
It is.
sort of number of preference or?
No, I just took the names out of the individual Parks Commission members, so you didn't. Yeah, it was just Parks Commission member, and it's in no particular order, but those are individual Parks Commission. So each Parks Commission member is listed as a 1 through 7. That's all. It was their input.
Do you have is there anywhere where you have a tally of the totals?
No, because they varied so much. It wasn't a simple number to select from. So that's why I put them in this one table. And the term is on the far left of the table and what we were requesting input on. For example, the initial offering, how do we go out and select people? Is it first come, first serve or a lottery? And as you can see, majority of the people said lottery. And so again, each individual Parks Commission member provided input at the April or between the April and May meeting. And then at the May meeting, we discussed their table. And on the very far right column was additional discussion topics and or further clarification. There was never a vote on by the Parks Commission on which ones they preferred. So we don't have that in there. But again, I'll just quickly go down the list of the terms. We talked about the types of craft that could go in there. The options included stand-up paddleboards or SUPs, kayaks, canoes, rowboats, rowing shells, those really long rowing shells with oarlocks that are spread way out, and then small sailboats that have no motors on them. And you can see majority of everybody put in SUPs, kayaks, and canoes. Though canoes are bigger than most kayaks and paddleboards, so the question was, is it worth to store a certain number of canoes in there if it's going to take up, one canoe takes up the room of 2 paddleboards? And that just came down to a question of, well, then maybe you pay differently depending on which one you're storing. So you can see the comments here. One of the Parks Commission members wanted surf skis. Those are pretty big. I was unfamiliar with the surf ski, but it's like a large kayak that has that doesn't have or that's solid. It's something you might see in a rental facility out at the ocean or out at a large open bay where you actually sit on top of the kayak, and they're usually all plastic. But that's where surf ski term came from.
Yeah, my wife has one. They're like a kayak.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then the question of rental term, how long do we, I identify, or how long do we allow people to renew their rentals? Do we say it's a monthly obligation, a quarterly, a yearly, 6 month? And you can see there was a lot of options provided at the initial input all over the board. But I can tell you by the end of the meeting on May 5th, the far right column was what the majority of Parks Commission members recommended. 6 months from January to June and then July to December with no automatic renewals. So
then they would draw twice a year?
right. And the intent there is, and based on the input we've received, is that the Parks Commission says that, and this is based on a comment I made of the mayor's concern has been, are we going to have somebody in there that doesn't care that they never use their kayak? They just don't want to keep it in their garage. And so they're going to store it down there and they don't care if they pay $40 a month. The money's not an object to them. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 people in this community like that. So if we're going to have that happen, well, and we've got and part of it is based off of how much demand we have. If we have, as we talked about yesterday, if we have 30 spots and we have 30 people that want to store their paddle boards in there, or kayaks, canoes, not a problem. But if we have 30 spots and we have 300 people that want to store it in there, that's a problem because they're high demands. And we don't want to have to charge or only allow storage to the highest bidder. We want to be able to have it available to anybody. And so so that's essentially what they came down to, was every 6 months they would have a new lottery drawing. Let's say a month before the rental term is up, the city would say, okay, submit your request for paddle boards or for storage, and then we'll draw a lottery and we'll notify those people and they can put their boat in as of July 1, and everybody has to take their boat out June 28th and give us 2 days to clean or something. So that was actually a benefit I saw, is that we make sure we have turnaround constantly. We're always in there cleaning and checking our equipment with it empty. So anyway, that's the general consensus. And again, and I think I mentioned this in the memo, but the intent here was to provide a variety of options for administration to consider when setting the rental terms, because that's one of the reasons why we're here today. The rental terms are going to be established by administration. The only thing that we're going to come back to council on is looking for the rate to charge the residents or non-residents, the people using the storage building, to say how much money the council thinks is appropriate to charge people. But the actual terms of the storage, it will be developed by administration. So, and then timing wise, of course, so I'm going a little backwards. And Mayor, I saw your hand up just a second. Timing wise, I mean, we know that we're trying to get this project out to bid and constructed for the community paddlers dock and have it constructed by October, November timeframe. And so we are running this human powered boat storage along the same time frame. And in fact, I've got a meeting, I think tomorrow, or maybe it's Thursday, with a rack company to help provide some guidance. So Mayor, you had your hand up.
Well, I want to let you finish.
Okay. Well, I was just going to go down this list here that we have. So a rental amount per month, you've seen it's anywhere from $25 to $50, $75 for non-residents. It's a wide variety. But again, that's a decision that council gets to make, not necessarily the Parks Commission, but they just looked at options. A surcharge. They had the question of, should there be a surcharge? And again, if to have people keep their kayaks down there for the summertime when there's the peak season, do we want to do that? And there was some saying yes, some saying no. But at the end, after the end of our May 5th meeting, you see the far right column, the general consensus was no surcharge for peak versus off-peak season. Lockers. So right now, the racks themselves are what we're talking about. But then the question came up of, do we need to provide lockers for people to store equipment? What we're talking about is a locker, and maybe you've seen these type of lockers, but they're open air lockers. They're lockers that have welded wire fabric, welded wire steel with, 1x1, 2x2 openings, so people can, the air gets through the locker, but and so if people put wet stuff in there, it's not going to mold, mildew, and create a mess. But and you can see in there, but you can't take anything out necessarily. And so do we provide lockers? And if we do, is it just for, if I was to go down and go paddleboarding, would I just lock my coat and wallet and keys or whatever in the locker, and then when I come back from paddleboarding, I'll open the locker, take my stuff out and be on my way? Or is it used for storing your flotation device, your PFD and your paddle? Because most paddles can break down and fit in a locker if they're constructed correctly. So is that what it's used for? And then somebody would have to rent a slot for your storing your board or kayak, and then also you'd be paying extra to have a locker provided. So that was a question. You can see the far right column, general consensus, user provided locks, but with city provided mechanism for in the storage rack. I'm sorry, I jumped. I'm sorry, I've been talking locker option. Yes, they were well ventilated with user provided locks. Fee for the locker. And then locks, sorry, I jumped that one. And then other, there was just some general comments. And I'm just going to go to the far right column because that's what we ended up talking about the most. What does the security of the boat storage building look like? Well, there is some concern because it's going to be inside a building, and that building is it's not heated, it's at least out of the elements, and maybe somebody would want to start spending a lot of time in there to keep out of the elements. And theft is an issue, or a concern, I should say, not an issue, it's a concern. But that said, the canoe and kayak race team has readily told us, even though they store $4,000, $5,000 boats at Scansey Park that are never locked, nobody has bothered them, which is shocking, pleasantly shocking.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is. But maybe that won't be the case here, because it's going to be, as you know, in Scansey Park, that's out in the open. People can see those fairly easily and walk past. That's not going to be the case here. It's going to be hidden away, not even visible from the roadway at all, and behind closed doors.
Well,
So-
I'm assuming there's going to be an indemnification to the city that's going to go along with any of these agreements.
Yeah, there will. Yep, there will.
So, Jeff,
Yeah.
there's not HVAC in that building?
No, there's an electric heater that turns on to keep it above freezing level. I mean, I think it's probably set to like 45 degrees or something. But there's ventilation. Oh, don't get me wrong. There's a dehumidifier in there to remove humidity. But there's no HVAC. There's not cooling. There's not a true HVAC system in there. No.
But there's up in the corner of at least one up in the corner, there's a heating, like
Yeah,
a warehouse heating deal.
exactly. There's electronic heating element up in the corner just to keep it from freezing in the wintertime. Or keep it, above freezing.
We have any idea what the utility costs are there?
I don't know what the utility costs are there. No. But talking about security, we do have security cameras and a recorded security system down there. Now it's not able to be viewed remotely because we don't have Wi-Fi down at that park. So if anything happens, we do have security cameras and we can go into the building and review the security footage, but we can't look at it like many people see their Ring cameras on their cell phones. We can't see them wirelessly now, but we do have security cameras. And following up on the security concern is what happens if the door's left open. Let's say I go down there and there's going to be a code on the person door that accesses the building. If you can picture the building right next to the restrooms on the far right side of the 3 garage doors is a person door. It has a code on it. If you rent from us, we will give you a code and you can get in there. But most people probably won't want to carry their boats out that door because it's just not wide enough. So on the public side, the far right garage door will be accessible to the general public. And so I'm going to go in there, I'm going to get my canoe with my friend, and we're going to pull it off the racks, and I'm going to open the garage door to get out. Well, if I had all my stuff and I go down to the launch floats and I start paddling the way, I'm like, oh, oops, I forgot to close the garage door. Oh, well, I'll close it when I get back. So now the garage door is left wide open. We're looking into the possibility of having that garage door automatically close after a certain amount of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. But what happens if we don't know if that's allowed by code, because while there's safety systems built into the garage door opener, that garage door is set that you have to push the close button and hold it for, I think, 5 seconds before it engages in the close action. And then if you let go of that button, it stops closing immediately. And so the question is it going to be allowed by code for us to put an automatic garage door closer on there if nobody's there? So we're looking into that. But what happens if the door is left open? I mean, you're right, Councilmember Franich, there's going to be indemnification clauses and hold harmless clauses in there, but we don't want to create a problem necessarily. So, and I'm in the process of working with Chief Busey and Ken Andrews on just that, about what the concerns are going to be, or what the safety and enforcement of if there is an issue, enforcement of those terms. And that's, I'm jumping ahead to the last bullet, but any questions at this point?
Yeah, Jeff, under surcharge, three of the commissioners left it blank, but I see that all the other ones think have a surcharge.
Yes,
especially under peak.
yes, that was based off of the concern of having monthly registrations or short-term quarterly registrations.
Mom, I'm in a meeting right now.
Generally, when we talked to them on May 5th about the
You gave her
about-
my number.
Mo, you're not muted, Mo.
Oh.
Generally, when we talk to the Parks Commission about that surcharge, when we talked about the actual rental term being 6 months from January to June and July to December and going through the lottery process, they said no need for a surcharge. Nobody gets the peak season. You split it between either the first half of the year or the second half of the year. So the question of surcharge was off the table.
Could you say that again, please?
Sure. So the reason for the surcharge was that it's folks who might only want to come, whether they're snowbirds or they just don't use their kayak much in the wintertime, would they be willing to pay a surcharge to have the busiest part of the season, which let's just say it's June, July, August, to store their kayaks down there or paddleboards? Would they be willing to pay that an extra amount? And generally, the Parks Commission said yes. If you're going to be storing your canoe, kayak on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, yes, you should be charged a surcharge. And if it's quarterly, it'd be like the second and third quarters of the year. But then when we started talking about this under the rental term, and let me see if I can highlight it. No, I can't. But the rental term of having 6 months only from January to June and July to August, you broke apart that peak season. And so by breaking apart the peak season versus off-peak season, they said, well, maybe a surcharge is no longer necessary. But this is the kind of input we're looking for. Again, we're just looking for input from the Public Works Committee, because I'm going to have any revisions you might have and put them in another column, and that's going to go to the city administration for them to start developing the storage rental terms, along with some other input, which I haven't got to yet, but that's the last one that I haven't got to, which is this request for a survey this month or possibly next month of the public to provide input. And so with that, we're looking at asking some very simple questions of the general public. What kind of boat would you want to store in there? And how much would you be willing to pay? Of course, that's a hard question to receive a truthful answer to, because everybody's going to say, oh yeah, I'll pay whatever it takes to get my boat in there, because you're not writing a check at that time or debiting your account. So that's something that we would like to ask a general question to the general public using SurveyMonkey or something to ask 3 general questions.
Well, I mean, they would also could say, I want to pay $10.
They could, yeah. And then we have to just decide how much it's worth. Because there's a lot going into this. I mean, if you think about just the general public accessing it and having to provide operations and maintenance to the facility, we also have to take into account how we're going to charge people. And if we're going, and we have a system in place using the existing Springbrook system, accounting system that we have at the city now, where people could just go online, select what fee they want to pay. And it would be, in this case, it would be like Ansage Boat Storage Building fee. Select your boat, and let's say the most expensive boat, the city decides to have kayaks be the least expensive and canoes be the most expensive and paddleboards in the middle, because they want a tiered system for rental fees. And then you have to select which term you're paying for in our Springbrook system and what type of boat you have. And then they make the payment. Well, now somebody on staff, we don't have that person identified yet, has to go back and make sure that, and we will identify each individual boat by a numbering system on the rack. So each storage unit will be numbered, of course. And so now somebody has to go through and look at the printout. Okay, everybody paid or not, and you have to go ask people to pay. Everybody paid, and person in slip number 4 paid $40 and they were supposed to pay $50. Well, now you've got to go back and do that. So there's a lot of staff time that may be necessary to go back and correct this. It's automated to a certain extent, meaning you can pay without having a person, but somebody has to go back and check that. And we've brought in finance, and Dave Rodenbach has said we're going to have to do audits of it occasionally. If there's not a problem with it and everybody seems to be, the audit seems to pass most times, then that's going to be fine. But if we audit it and most times people aren't paying correctly, we're going to have to audit it more, take more enforcement action against them. So there's a lot to think about that's not even summarized here on this table.
Well, right. And I mean, you know, I know that there's money in the budget to buy the racks, but I mean, those different types of craft, they have different lengths. So, I mean, how are you going to determine what length of racks to buy?
Well, that's something we're going to talk to the rack manufacturer about later this week. And one of the questions that came up when we were talking about fees to charge was one option, and I think it was shown here on. Let's see. Oh yeah, in the additional discussion, pay up front for rental term. If not too complicated, do a base charge depending on the type of boat with added per foot cost. So you could say a paddleboard is going to be a base rate of just $5 a month and then $2 a month on top of that per foot. And the same thing for canoe and kayak. So therefore, if you've got people who have kayaks that are really long, 2-person kayaks, 3-person kayaks, they're going to need more space. And so we've got to accommodate that. And so is that fair to charge that person the same amount with a kayak that's only 10 feet long?
Well, absolutely not.
But then it gets into, we have a much more convoluted system for charging fees. And so is it worth it to do that? So anyway.
Well, I believe the demand is going to be high, and not everybody's different kayak lengths may not be able to be stored there. I mean, I think to try and keep this somewhat manageable, maybe we need to have, I don't know, I have really no idea on if there is such a thing as a standard length kayak and a standard length paddleboard. But maybe we need to just have some standard lengths in there. And if somebody has a kayak that's too long, well, you know, it just is not going to fit there.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Okay,
can't.
So set dimension limits.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can go through the exercise of trying to please everybody on the different sizes.
Right. Yeah. Very true. Okay. I see a bunch of hands raised.
I lost them all, so I can't. All I see is
Kuhn. Sure. Mayor Kuhn.
Mayor Kuhn's been up for a long time.
Yeah. I want to thank Jeff for all the work he's done on this. This is complicated, you know, and there's a lot to think about. Like one thing Jeff mentioned is theft. So let's say someone takes their, you have to basically push the button to leave the building for it to go down. But let's say you want to go down there, put your kayak in the water, and you want to go back to your locker, and you don't want to keep the door back. You want to keep the door back open. But then you also don't want someone to forget to close the door. That's so So we almost have to have a system to where you have to push the code for it to close for safety, but we almost have to have something to override it, that if it's left open for a certain period of time, then it automatically closes. So again, it's complicated. A couple thoughts. I do like the idea, Jeff mentioned how, some of these people are going to be coming from school. They're going to be getting off the bus and they don't want to carry their life jacket and everything to school all day long. So having a locker for a life jacket or their stuff so they don't have to go home or carry it all through school makes sense. I do like the idea of the city having the locks, having lock combos, because I can see someone leaving their lock and then we have to cut it off. And maybe there's a rental lock fee, but make it so it's all the same. So everyone has a combo lock and they're owned by the city. And number PC4 and PC7 like that as well, with the city issuing the locks. I'd like to break up the summer so that no one gets the whole summer. So if it's 6 months, we should do like a January to June and then a July to December. So both people that have 6 months get some decent weather. And then if you're going to do every 3 months, break up the 3 months more like May to July, August to October, November to January. I'm saying this slow because luckily Mo's writing this down. February, maybe to April. She's just scribbling to make me feel good. That way, because someone put here, June, July, August, that's not fair for the people in the winter. So try to spread out the time so each person that rents it gets a decent time. And it is tricky on the rack size, because we want to have various racks go all the way from the front to the back. So part of what we're going to, when Jeff talks to those people, I think it's the bars that go out that we're going to want to make sure we have enough bars so that the sizes of the kayaks, if they're bigger or smaller, there's support. I don't know how he's going to figure all that out, but double kayaks should cost more. But kind of like, I think what we need to do is kind of like Jim mentioned, is we need to start simple. We shouldn't try to fit everyone. We should start simple. And then we should get everyone that rents it to give us a little survey back. Fill out a survey card. And after they've rented it for a year, we're gonna learn from this. But not over-invent maybe go out to another facility and see what they've done. But try to start simple. And then as the years progress, we'll get it figured out more. So,
and Mayor, that's a great point. I failed to say that at the beginning, but a lot of what the Parks Commission did was actually go out and look for other agencies that do this. And for better or for worse, there's not a whole lot of cities that do this. There's a whole lot of nonprofits that work with jurisdictions, but the nonprofits are the ones that manage this. And I know we are going to manage this at least for now, but that's how the Parks Commission did it. I mean, these Parks Commission members have been very helpful going out and doing this kind of legwork so that staff can be focusing on gathering the information or collecting the information instead of going out to gather. But that's where a lot of this came from. Kenmore, Bainbridge Island. There's two others that I think I can't remember the names of, but yeah.
Yeah, this is great. This is exciting.
Yeah, and it's all due by, we're trying to get all this wrapped up by September.
I'm not sure if Councilmember Luke or Councilmember Himes had their hand up first, so.
I did.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Himes.
Okay, a couple things. One, this is a very interesting problem we got here. This is a chance for some great thought has gone into this, and some additional thought is going to have to go into it. On the benchmarking side, I'd really like to push on that one a little bit. Called "Somebody's Seen This Movie Before." That's one of my general axioms, called "Somebody's grappled with this problem before." And I'm pretty sure the storage facility close to my son in Seattle called Green Lake
Yeah.
does this kind of thing. And I would pick their brain
They,
dry. Okay.
they also
They've been at it
have,
for years.
they have a full-time person who works there.
Okay.
And they have a staff that works there, and they also rent them to the general public. So it's hard to compare, but yes, we don't have a full-time person working here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in peak season, you never know. That's the first thing. Second thing is the to try to sort through all these alternatives here. I really see council struggling with this. I'll be very honest with you. And I recall a discussion we had about 6 months ago where Parks Commission said they would really like to take on something meaty, okay? And instead of the usual stuff, they wanted something that would be a real challenge, if I recall. And I recall it very well. And I think they got one on their hands right here. What I would suggest is that take the comments that we've offered here, but I would challenge Parks Commission to try to come to some understanding or consensus would be desirable, but if you can't pull that off, at least a majority, and a recommendation, and then the key points that support that recommendation. What were they thinking? We got to the far right, and then it was sort of like the proof was left to the student. I'd really like to see what they have in mind relative to this, and what their thought is on why they feel that way. Okay, what is it? Well, what are the facts? What are the key considerations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think council can do a pretty good job of choosing from a recommendation or modifying a recommendation. But I'll tell you, starting from scratch, this is going to be a long project.
Well, again, the only thing we're going to ask council input on in the future is this information right here. Let's see, where's my highlighter?
Okay.
Everything else is going to be decided by administration. What we're doing here is gathering input for administration to consider.
Okay.
And so the only thing we're going to come back to council on is the actual fee and the amount.
Okay. Okay. I must have missed that in the initial part of the discussion. I thought we were looking at this whole list.
No.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, Jenny, but this is kind of an important, since we're on this topic. I think that the number of the sizes, I think the council should have some say so on the sizes of the racks, because that's going to directly influence how many people can participate. And I'm sorry, Councilmember Hvac. Can I let Councilmember Hvac ask her questions?
That's fine with me.
Thank
ahead,
you. Thank you. So is renting these items supposed to pay for operating the storage unit? Is there any kind of justification for how much money is being charged, taking into consideration the electricity, the security things? Is any money, are we looking at any kind of, are we trying to get it to pay half of these costs, these maintenance costs, or nothing of it?
Well, we're trying to get it to pay for, at least not exceed the cost we pay for the staff time and the electrical well, I don't even know what the electrical's not very much. It's all LED, and the heaters are only used part of the year, but we're trying to really just have it pay for the staff time that's used to manage this program.
Okay, thanks. That's my question.
Councilmember Himes. You're muted. Bob?
I'm
You're
assuming that the upper limit of what we can charge is what we're asking the kayak club to pay. I can't imagine us going in and saying, hey, you got to pay more than these guys over here that got these dedicated racks. Okay. I just
Well,
can't
I-
believe that.
I'm not going to necessarily say that's not comparing apples to apples, because they provide their own racks, and they also are doing significant. Well, they're doing public benefit as part of their rental agreement and lease agreement. So the general public doesn't have that same obligation that the canoe and kayak race team has.
That would be a topic for future discussion in my mind. I think that's going to be
When-
a hard sell. Okay.
When we come to the council with the rental amount, I will have a better idea of how much we're going to be charging, how many boats we'll be able to have on the public side, how many
Okay.
boats we'll have on the private side. But that's a very good point. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And we can do a how much per boat on the canoe and kayak race team side, how much
Yep.
per boat on the public side.
Exactly.
All right, is there nothing further on this? Can we move on to public comment? Or I mean, excuse me, the capital improvement project review?
That's fine with me. If yeah.
Fine
I
with me.
don't see any other hands up, so let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to just quickly go through these. Sorry, just a second here. It's asking, so I've locked things up. So I'm going to go through the variety of tiers here in the CIP. Some of them will go pretty quick. Most of them should actually go pretty quick, because we've gone through these essentially, not the schedules themselves, but we went through the projects generally and the status of them when we had our first quarter update at the end of about a week ago. So let me see if I can find tier 1. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. What you probably saw if you did look at these schedule updates, you saw that, and I provided all 4 this time because all 4 have drastically changed. They essentially tier 3 and 2 have been exhausted. Most of the projects have either been moved into tier 1 or moved into tier 4. So that's a quick summary, but you'll see tier 1 projects now are, I think it's 5 pages long. Yeah, 5 pages long. So there's a lot going on. And so I'm just going to go through these. I'll say the names, but if you have questions, please just speak up and interrupt or raise your hand. So we've got Edinboat Brick House project. I think we generally know the status of that. Edinboat Carriages. My installation is I just want to point out, my installation here goes the entire fish window. It's not likely how long it's going to take them to install it, but that's the fish window they have for construction. So that's why it's so long. Community Paddlers Dock on track to be done by the end of November. Shoreline Master Program Amendment for the public art, that's going to be going to the hearing examiner in June. So we should have all of the land use actions completed and all the appeals and everything else completed by July, and we'll be submitting in our land use applications no later than early July. We may be submitting in June. I've got a meeting with the group in 2 weeks, I think. So we can verify that. Moving on, Masonic Lodge, having discussions with, we were going to be working with Carl DeSemis in the planning department. His work schedule has become overloaded, and Katrina's trying to find the time to help us with this Masonic Lodge visioning. She had that planner inside of her as always welcome, and the parks manager inside of her has not, that fire has not yet extinguished. So we appreciate her input and support on this project.
I might mention, even though it's not on here, you know, it's great that we've done a lot of crosswalks in the last couple of years, and I've told Jeff that it's important to follow through with getting a crosswalk like a RRFB at Veterans Park. It's been in the master plan for a long time, so we're going to work to get a crosswalk that's push button at Veterans Park and also at Soundview and Hunt, which is a big deal. There's a bus stop up there and a lot of cars go down, and it's also hard to get across Soundview at Hunt for cars too, because you've got that big hill at Reed Road, where below Wilco, where you cross, then it goes down. So there's no crosswalk until you get to the very top of the hill. And there's a lot of pedestrians that just run across that street. So this will slow cars down, and it will also make it easier for cars to get across. But there's a bus stop there, and I've heard for years people wanting a crosswalk there. So we're aiming to work on that as well.
Yes,
Which
and it might
direction?
be in tier 3 or tier 4. I need to look at that. It might be in this list.
What, Jim?
Which direction, on Soundview going up and down or across Soundview to Reed?
It would be across Soundview.
Perpendicular
So-
to Soundview.
From Hunt across Soundview to Reed?
It would
Yeah.
probably be south of Hunt, slightly.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
well,
But it's up to them. It's up to public.
there is no crosswalk on Reed.
No, there isn't, but we can put a receiving ramp on the other side, and that's acceptable. All we have to do is put a receiving ramp and the mid-block crossing. It would probably be at we haven't done any topo design. It would probably be just north, on the north leg of the intersection of Hunt and Soundview, crossing Soundview Drive.
Like where the school bus stops?
I'm not familiar with where the school bus stops. I've got a map open if you want me to look at that.
Probably Abersold Street.
Yeah, just up from there. Yeah.
So that's south of Hunt.
No, that's north of Hunt.
It's just before you get, if you're going up the hill, it would be just before you get to Hunt.
Right.
Again, I didn't mean to jump in, but those crosswalks are important, as everyone knows. And, those are two ones that, again, the one at Veterans has been in the works for 10 to 15 years. And the Soundview one would do a lot of different things.
Okay. Sorry, let me get back to my screen. Okay, so Antage Park Advanced Mitigation, we're in the process of working with Army Corps to finalize that permit and Department of Fish and Wildlife to enter into an agreement. So Mayor and I are talking to them tomorrow, hopefully. And then Parks Recreation Open Space Plan, we just talked about that. There's that same due date. HVAC assessment, this is a minor one, but Marty and Ken are working on this one right now. We hope to have a consultant contract ready for the mayor's signature in June. And then we'll get a report in time for the budget so council can make a decision on how to proceed with the HVAC at the Civic Center. Civic Center building and access control, we're in the process of going through that right now, trying to finalize which product we're going to be using, and then put together a bid for an estimate if we can fit it within our current estimate, or we just might be asking to install a product that is beyond budget due to security reasons. Here's the pedestrian crosswalk improvements. This one actually has changed since it's been distributed. Oh no, we did catch it. Trent did catch it. So bid award is now June 14th, though we still have construction occurring by the end of October or August. Sorry, I won't say October. And in time for the school opening. That's a hard deadline in the contract, Trent told me this morning.
Thank you.
Yep. Public Works Operations Center in design right now, and we may know more by the end of this year. It is possible. The consultant said they may be able to have this design completed in time to go out to bid this year. We don't have budget to go out to bid, but if we do, we have time, we may approach council and have that discussion about going out to bid this year instead of next year. Stinson Avenue, we know the status on that one. Stinson Harborview, more to come on that one in end of May, first part of June. We will have a preliminary design on the gravity sewer relocation by then. 38th Avenue, actually that one that one's on track to be awarded at the next council meeting. So that's exciting. Councilmember Himes. You're muted, Councilmember Himes.
I assume on the Stinson Harbor View that based on the success of the Rosedale Stinson, what I call the mass shutdown, that we're planning on that same type of strategy down there in Harborview.
Yes.
Good.
Remember though, the Stinson Harborview intersection, we have quite a few utility relocates. We had some fairly minor utility relocates that we needed to do, a little bit of storm relocate, a little bit of water relocate that was minor. But now with the sewer issue, we are going to have a major major utility relocation project. So we're bidding the project as one construction contract, but splitting it into two phases, one for the contractors to follow. One is the first phase, of course, is utility relocates, and the second is the roundabout construction itself.
Yeah.
But yes, it will be similar in style to the Rosedale Stinson. Work with the contractor to do a mass shutdown, significant impacts for a very short amount of time. Burnham half street front improvements, we talked about that briefly, but we're in design and permitting on that right now. This ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, that was moved up. We received a letter from Washington State Department of Transportation that essentially said you need to have it finalized by and go through the public process by October. Otherwise, we're going to stop all funding to you. So we've moved that way up, and Trent's working on getting a consultant on board to help us with that. Water projects, we've got a consultant now working on this emergency water tie-in for Canterwood Boulevard. Water comp plan, again, consultant contract, just finalizing a few things based on comments from the State Department of Health. And well 3 design and construction, that's in the middle of construction right now. We should be having that well back online, hopefully by July 1st, which of course is our peak season, start of our peak season for water. Wastewater projects, lift station 6 proceeding along, lift station 12 proceeding along, getting out to go to bid. Murphy's Landing Navigation Channel dredging, it was approved last night for the agreement. And then we'll start on consultant selection now that we've got that, and hopefully have something started on design and permitting later this summer. And then the Burnham Drive 96th Street culvert repair, that's in line with the Burnham Drive sidewalk project. And the stormwater revenue study, we've already had one meeting with the staff. We've received an input from Ashley Emery on having a data download so he can start looking at our data. And we have a meeting with Ashley, I think it's on Thursday. And thanks, Mo. And so we're going to be having a kickoff meeting with Ashley on Thursday, and then we'll set some milestones, including trying to get to the Public Works Committee meeting, probably, hopefully in June. If not, it'll be the one in July. The idea is we do the stormwater revenue study and have that done by July, so that we can jump into the full 3 utility rate studies starting in August, so we can look at rates and set rates if we need to adjust them by October, so that it can take effect January 1st. Remember last year we skipped all rate increases. All right, any questions on tier 1? Yes, Councilor Himes, did you have your hand? Oh no, okay. All right, I'm going to go to tier 2. Did that change for everybody? Can everybody see tier 2 now?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, this one was drastically reduced because most of them went into tier 1. Native plant vegetation, or native vegetation planning, still working on that, but though we have a couple ideas on how to do that. Generator replacement, that's going to be starting very soon. And wastewater treatment plant digester upgrades, that's going to be happening very soon also. And then there's the utility rate study starting now July. It probably should now be in August. Any questions on this one? Okay, we'll move to tier 3. Again, most of these are probably familiar from our first quarter update. Re-roof, reinsulate the Bogue Visitor Center along with new HVAC. We're looking at moving that in fully into the 2022 budget. right turn lane at Walachet Drive. If we have capacity later this fall, we'll start the design. And then go through the lengthy IJR process, intersection justification report with Washington State Department of Transportation. And the History Museum driveway renovations, those supposed to be staff design. And we don't have staff to design it, but anyway, we pushed that off. And then here's the one that the mayor was just referring to. This is the mid-block crossings at 50th and Soundview. So again, that was supposed to be staff design and public works operations construction, but we're pushing that off. And then sports complex water main, that's really dependent on the sports complex phase B, 1B. I think, oh yeah, here we go. Lift station 1 rehabilitation, that's at Crescent Creek Park. That's been pushed off. And then marine outfall maintenance. We are required to do marine outfall maintenance and put a plan together for our NPDS phase 2 permit, but we don't have to do that, I believe, until 2020, early 2023. So we just pushed that out since it wasn't a priority at this point. And Donkey Creek daylighting. We just pushed that out due to the need to ideally gather in person with the public and have conversations about this, because this one could be contentious quick.
Yes, it can.
Yeah. Any questions on tier 3? Okay. Tier 4, Scansy net shed repairs. We're going to patch it as necessary this year and do the design hopefully in construction as we get into 2022. Commercial fishing home
That's
port.
very disappointing.
I understand. Commercial fishing home port design maybe happen at the end of this year and go into next year. Cushman Trail connection to Harborview Drive. That is really up in the air depending on the Conservation Futures property acquisition. So that's been pushed out. Annual pavement maintenance, as we discussed on April 29th, that's been pushed out. And various crosswalk and sidewalk projects, here it is in 2021, actually moving into 2022. Sports complex, oh, I didn't delete it off this one. That should have been deleted. Okay, well, we've got it twice now. And then slip line repairs, both sewer and stormwater slip line repairs. They haven't failed completely. So we are going to be moving that into 2022 since they haven't failed completely. And then lastly, public works standards update and on-street parking code development. Any questions? Okay. Sorry, that's a lot. That's one of the reasons why we hand it to you ahead of time so you can look at it, but there's a lot there. We have a lot going on.
All right, thank you. All right, so now we're down to public comment. I imagine since, yes, he has his hand up. Mr. Schmidt, if I'm pronouncing that right. You're on mute. What is it, *6?
Can you hear me now? This is Adam speaking.
Yes. Yeah.
All right,
3 minutes,
I'd
sir.
show my face. Oh, there, here we go. So first of all, thank you very much, everyone, for inviting me. I'm the proud new owner of 9322 Goodman Avenue. The backstory is I drove through Gig Harbor one day and fell in love with it. And the next day I put an offer in on a piece of land. So I have no real long-term connection to the city, except I fell in love with it. I've had the opportunity to live all over the world, from Switzerland, originally from Australia. I was in Texas for the last 5 years, and I came up here about a year ago and worked for a large company out of Seattle, also in the marine industry, so a lot of marine. I don't have any building experience, but what I have done is I've engaged a local builder, a local designer, a local engineer, and a local interior designer. And the idea is I'd love to build my family home and make home here for many, many years to come. So I don't know how the process works. I have to commend you all. You have a lot on your plate just by listening to tonight, from boat racks to properties. I don't know how you do it all, but it's very impressive, and I appreciate you inviting me in. So if I can help in any way, we have plans already drawn. We have all the concerns you raised already addressed with stormwater runoff and all things like that. In fact, we're ready to submit plans at the end of this month, assuming a successful outcome. But I'm open to any questions, or again, thank you for the consideration. And if you could take into consideration my courage to invest every last penny I have.
Well, I don't see any questions. So thank you for sitting through 2 hours and 20 minutes to be able to speak. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, boy, I think we're on overtime now for this meeting. So if there's nothing further, motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff, and your team. Thank you. And I make the motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.